Okay, great. Welcome everybody on Facebook. Hope you are having a good week so far. Want to send a shout out to my dear friend, Michelle Wolf, the former chair of the local advisory committee of self-determination at Lanterman Regional Center, who sadly lost her husband this week. To cancer, and my sending her love, and from the whole disability community. Many of you know Michelle. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome everybody. If you've never been to an SDP Connect, my name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United. I am your host of the most, as my mother would say, for many of these SDP Connects, but I'm joined with many other people who do important work here from our team. And I wanted to introduce at the beginning a couple of members of our team who have been leading an incredible leadership training program for what we call emerging leaders. Some of you may be actually part of that program. And the program just ended for this year. We will likely be doing more trainings later in 2022. However, and by the way, these trainings are only for self-advocates and family advocates. But we are now entering the next phase of our leadership training. And so I'm going to give it over to Gilda Giron and Miguel Lugo, who are in charge of our training program, to make a little announcement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gilda Giron. I am the Director of Outreach and Leadership Training. And DVU received the California Department of Developmental Services Equity Grant and the Disability Inclusion Fund of Borealis Philanthropy, which allowed DVU to put on a 5-part training of the Emerging Leaders Program. And like Judy said, the last training was this past Saturday, the 12th. And as the next part of the program, we are matching emerging leaders with mentors. And we want to ask you, or if you know of someone that that is interested in mentoring emerging leaders, to please contact me. I'm going to put my email in the chat, or if you can add my email. And so many of our participants expressed their interest in getting involved with the self-determination local advisory committees, and hope that you or someone you know may be interested in fostering the growth of 1 or 2 emerging leaders. And we are also in need of Spanish-speaking mentors. A minimum for the mentors, we're asking for a minimum of 2 meetings with your mentees before May 31st. And if you're interested, I can definitely email you more information. Miguel, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, just real quick. There's many of you on this call that have that experience, that expertise that our emerging leaders would really benefit from. The fact that you guys are on this call, on this afternoon on your own time, tells us that you are more than willing to give and share your knowledge. And as I'm scrolling through the pages, I'm seeing a few names and faces that I would really love for you guys to volunteer some of your time. Anyways, I'll leave it at that, and thank you so much.
And if you are interested, we will be meeting with all the mentors before they meet with their mentee or the emerging leaders. So if you're interested, email me. My email is in the chat. It's gilda@dvunited.org. And I'll give it back to Judy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. We are gonna get started soon. I'm gonna introduce 2 other partners who work on the self-determination program here at DVU. They include Molly Kennedy, our self-determination program fellow, and Tim Jin, our assistant director of communications rights projects. and they are really the team that works on self-determination. Before we specifically talk about what we thought was going to be a new directive, what we thought would be out, because I have seen copies of this directive on participant choice specialists. I was told it was going to be out last week. Then I was told it was going to be out Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and it still does not seem to be out. There is a previous one that we can talk about with you, and the changes that I've seen in the directive, because I've seen a draft of it. I'll be able to go over with you what those differences are. They're not going to make a major difference to the community, I don't think. They're going to make a major difference to the self-determination program, however. First, I just want to show folks a directive that came out last week around the funding of the self-determination program. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's just a lot of you who come don't know that there are local advisory committees at every regional center, and you should know that these are very important players in what you're working on, and how well the self-determination program can go. So the first, I'm just trying to clear my screen so I'm seeing everything. Okay. So this is, by the way, the same sort of directive that comes out every year. It has been expanded over time, but every regional center has a local advisory committee, and that local advisory committee helps to spend some funds that we ourselves call the pilot funds. It's because there was a self-determination program before this one. It's been around for well over 20 years, and it was in only 5 regional centers, about 200 people, and those 200 people were in a self-determination program pilot that was only paid for out of state funds. You should know that in the traditional regional center system, every dollar you spend is matched by at least 50 cents from the federal government. So these were 200 people who were experimenting in a pilot of self-determination who we weren't getting a single dollar from federal funds. So now that all those pilot participants have moved into the regular self-determination program, we are now getting additional funds from the federal government we weren't getting before, to the tune of about $4 million. And of that $4 million, half of that money is given to regional centers. Pretty much it's supposed to go to implementation of the self-determination program, but I can tell you that there's absolutely no oversight, and we're not exactly sure what they spend their money on. But I'm not sure that there's a huge amount of accountability. Maybe I'm wrong. If there's somebody from a regional center who knows that if each regional center gets $100,000, that is on top of the money that they get for participant choice specialists, by the way. And I'm not exactly sure how they've been spending the money. But the other half, the other $2 million goes to implementation funding. And so you'll see here that this is the directive that came out that shows how the money is being spent, and or how the money should be spent. So it can do it. So these local advisory committees work with their regional centers to have an agreement on how those monies are to be spent. So they can spend it on a range of things, from training independent facilitators to joint training for participants, families, regional center staff, local volunteer advisory committee members, and others with a focus on training self-advocates and families from diverse communities. Assistance with your spending plan development, meaning you can actually spend it on extra funds for an FMS to help develop the spending plan, and collaborative groups, workshops to foster ongoing and shared learning. What shared learning means for everyone to know, shared learning means that staff, professionals, and self-advocates and family members learn together. It doesn't mean we separate each other. We all learn together. That is a very important thing. I have not seen enough of that shared learning going on with the funding that is being spent. So a couple of things I just want to make sure that people understand is that that the state of California acknowledges that the local volunteer advisory committees, that's what LVAC stands for, play an important role in the implementation and oversight of the self-determination program. Therefore, regional centers and local volunteer advisory committees must work collaboratively to prioritize the use of available funds to meet the needs of participants in their local area. Funds may only be expended after agreement is reached on local needs. Agreement is reached. We have been hearing a few things at some regional centers where staff are determining how all the funds are being spent, or maybe there's some input by the committee, but the staff do what they want and there's no oversight and accountability of those funds. So I wanted to make that clear. The enclosure actually talks, enclosure 1 talks a lot about the kinds of cool things that the local advisory committees can use their funding for, and how to get those funds from DDS. But here is the amount of money for this fiscal year that each local advisory committee will get. You'll see that the dollar amounts are higher for bigger regional centers. So it's based on the population. So that first $2 million that the regional centers just get, that's $100,000 for each regional center. So that's $2.1 million. This money for the local advisory committees is based on the population. So you'll see that the biggest regional center, Inland Regional Center, which has by far the most people, and most clients, they get over $200,000, $209,000. But the smaller regional centers, like Far Northern, only gets about $49,000. And West Side Regional Center gets only about $52,000. So anyway, many of you are on local advisory committees or go to those meetings. It's really important for you to encourage them to use those funds in ways that will actually meet the needs of your local community, and that you are asking for accountability on how those funds are being spent every single time the local advisory committees meets. Well, we've also heard that sometimes the local advisory committees dedicate, in fact, many of them wisely dedicate funding for one-on-one coaching. The problem is one-on-one coaching isn't working, because the only way to get the names of people who need coaching is to get referrals from the regional center. And if the referrals are not coming from the regional center staff, then nobody is actually getting coached. So you may have an agency that has a contract to provide coaching to 400 people, but they've only been referred to 2 people over an entire year. So you who are members of local advisory committees need to really keep on top of how that works. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And we're going to go on to our next, I guess what I should stop for a moment and ask if anybody has any questions specifically about that, because we're totally changing the subject. Well, not totally, because it is related to regional centers and implementation, but does anybody have any specific questions on that before we move on? I see NS. Go ahead, NS. You can unmute yourself. Oh, now you're back. Go ahead.
Sorry. My question is, when you say coaching, what type of coaching are you speaking of?
So many, not all, but many regional centers hire one agency, one person who's an independent facilitator. It could be multiple ones who have different language specializations. They hire people who are experts on the self-determination program to provide coaching to help people move in. So you may be entering the self-determination program. You don't know where to find an independent facilitator. You don't understand the process. You're very confused. The whole thing's very overwhelming. And these coaches are supposed to really help guide you. There's it's supposed to be a soft handoff from the regional centers to the coaches. And then the coaches are supposed to be providing the handoff then once again to the an independent facilitator in the FMS. They are not going to do your person-centered plans for you. That's not what their job is. Their job is to answer your questions, keep things moving, keep you on target so that you can move in quickly and smoothly into the SDP. Hope that answered the question about coaching. And somebody put in the chat that Regional Center of East Bay set up workshops, and they all seem to be run by agencies that have independent facilitators. So yeah, that's just a way that you might be, there's a lot of overlap. Let me tell you that there's a lot of overlap between the people who are getting the contracts to do the coaching and independent facilitators. That's for sure. I saw somebody putting something in Spanish. I'm not sure. First of all, let me note, I know people who speak Spanish and Korean always know to go to the interpretations to get their interpretation. But those of you who speak English, please go down to the bottom of your screen, click on interpretations, and click English if you're an English speaker, because I'm about to ask, well, this is not interpretation, but could you, Lorna, there's right in the chat, very close to the end, there's Victoria Preciado has a comment in Spanish. If you could translate that for me, please. Sadly, I have heard the same thing. In fact, for those of you who are part of the statewide self-determination advisory committee meeting, which took place yesterday for the entire day, that the woman, Maya Pavuskar, who's the chair of that committee, brought up that, oh, I'm sorry. Helen, did you hear that? I wasn't sure what channel. Did you hear that translation, Helen? Just want to make sure. Oh, I don't see you. Hold on. Let me get to the gallery so I can see. Are you good, Helen, or did you need me to translate? No. Okay. Thank you, Ed, for reminding me. The translation. That's okay. No worries. What Lorna said is that Inland Regional Center gets the most money, but they provide the least amount of services to the clients. I actually know enough Spanish where I probably could have interpreted it all by myself, but I didn't want to take the risk that I was going to screw it up. High school Spanish was not enough. Yeah, so Susan, you were asking whether this is different really than the $2,500 that people get. Look, no, it's on top of that. There's so many resources for you. So you have up to $2,500 that you can spend on person-centered planners to help you move into the program, independent facilitators. And on top of that, you can use coaches that exist at your regional center to help guide you. They're different than the independent facilitators, because they're not going to lead your person-centered planning, but they are going to keep you on track and help you identify planners and IFs and stuff like that. Tim, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
I don't understand how some regional centers are getting more money and some regional centers are getting very little amount. I understand it depends on how many people that they serve. But shouldn't it be based on how many participants that they have so far in SDP? It really doesn't make sense on accountability.
You know, that is an excellent point. And so theoretically, you are supposed to be, let's say your Inland Regional Center, which has, at least at one point, I haven't looked recently, had 35,000 clients. So theoretically, you're going to need to have a lot more money to hire a lot more coaches, or to do a lot more training, or to do a lot more resource fairs, because you are talking about a massive amount of people you need to do outreach to. versus my regional center, West Side, which only has about 10,000 consumers, so less than a third. And, you know, the amount of people that they need to reach out to is much smaller. Now, some things honestly cost the same, whether you're dealing with 100 people or 500 people. You could have a training cost about the same regardless. But you should, but, you know, I'm seeing that Jan from Inland Regional Center has something to say on Inland. Go ahead, Jan.
Well, Inland, there's never a quorum at the SDAC meetings,
Yeah.
and no one
Not
hardly
the
shows
same.
up. I mean, I don't think the families know. And I have a lot of families telling me, my service coordinator never tells me about self-determination. We have no idea what you're talking about, you know, when their friends tell them, and then my clients tell me what their friends are all saying. So it's just kind of you never know. I mean, it's just frustrating because there's nothing happening at the SDAC meetings that are beneficial. It seems like we're not getting anywhere. And so I guess the only solution is for me to be part of it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, Inland is a problem. I don't know if there's any Inland staff on this call, but Inland is a problem. And, you know, maybe I remember, by the way, many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, driving from LA out to Inland Regional Center. It took 3.5 hours for me to get there because of traffic. It only took me an hour and a half to get home, but 3.5 hours to get there to go to an in-person meeting, because even back then, like 4 or 5 years ago, there were problems. The regional center wasn't even hosting the meetings in the regional center building. It had to be hosted at the state council. The state council has, according to Maya, done an incredible job of supporting the committee. If it weren't for them, apparently the committee would barely exist. But the fact is that the state council and regional centers each appoint half of that committee. So if the committee is not showing up, then they need to be removed and new people need to get appointed.
Exactly.
And so that's obviously been a big barrier, is that new people are not getting appointed.
Yep, exactly. So you were going to say what Maya said at the meeting yesterday? Was that what she was talking about?
Yeah, Maya spoke a great deal about how her committee basically doesn't function, that she holds these meetings, nobody shows up. She cannot get the attention of the regional center to appoint new people. The state council needs to appoint new people as well. And that they've never have a quorum. So you should know that you need to have a vote on how the money's spent, right? So it can't just be like somebody's favorite somebody's best friend gets the money. It needs to be a vote. It needs to be a public vote. Well, if you never have a quorum, by the way, that's not a plain language term. Quorum means you have to have more than half of the people on the committee showing up so that you can have a vote. And if you never have more than half of the people show up, how are you going to have a vote on the money? So I would be interested to know, and maybe we'll have another meeting at some time on this, is we could do a Public Records Act request to ask how Inland Regional Center has said that they have spent their over $200,000 a year for the past 3 years. This money's been available for over 3 years. And how have they spent their money, and who got the money, and what were the results? Because we know that very few people are actually in the SDP, in Inland Regional Center. So we're not sure how 200,000 of taxpayer dollars is being spent. So
exactly.
Okay, so let me just see if there's anything else. Somebody was asking, do FMSs now need to help families do spending plans? I'm so glad the anonymous person asked this question, because I actually meant to bring this up, and I promise we will get to our presentation on participant choice specialists soon. But the FMSs are really not supposed to be helping you with your spending plans. It's the independent facilitators who are supposed to be helping you. And if you are going to the but the FMSs are being forced into this situation because they're receiving spending plans, either people who didn't use an independent facilitator, or independent facilitators who may not be experienced to know how to do one well. They are getting spending plans that are just not good, that are missing key pieces of information, and they're spending a lot of time transitioning people in. And it's been problematic. And you should know that 2 FMSs have left the program in the past several months, and that FMSs are being absolutely bombarded with too much work. And therefore, because of that, they are not doing their job well. Many of you express frustration about FMSs not returning your phone calls in a timely way, getting the reports wrong, missing payments. These are bad things that are happening with the FMSs. And here's where I come out on it. You guys may disagree with me, but here's how I come out on it. The FMSs are not our enemy here, guys. The FMSs have to succeed, or else self-determination is going away. We have to support the FMSs, figure out how they can improve the services that they provide to us, and then help them do better. Because they are here for us. The FMSs came into this program because they believe in the self-determination program. Many of them are national agencies who work on self-determination in other states. I have learned a lot about self-determination from FMSs who work nationally. And so I want us to be thoughtful when we are criticizing the FMSs to say, let's get rid of them all. We don't need them. Somebody needs to investigate them. And instead to say, what can we do to help things get better? Because we need them to succeed. So that's just where I come from. I know Tim and I have had this conversation. Harvey Lapin and I have had this conversation. It is super important that we lock arms with the FMSs. Now, it doesn't mean they're all going to do things perfectly. Believe me, I've had my conversations even with my own FMS about improving things. But we need them to succeed. Just like, by the way, we need independent facilitators to succeed. I do not sit and criticize IFs. What I say is, you know what? A lot of them have not had a lot of experience. Yes, they need more training. Yes, some of them could be more helpful. That I don't want ones that rip people off like that. I'm totally willing to say there are people, there are some who have ripped off folks who like taken the $2,500 and not even produced a person-centered plan. So those folks I put in a different category. But for those independent facilitators who are really trying their best but don't have the broad knowledge, let's support them. Let's lift them up, because it's the only way the self-determination program is going to succeed. That's my little soapbox today. So Lourdes, one of our independent facilitators, go ahead.
I honestly think FMSs are doing what they can. And if you compare what the work that they're doing, paying and doing all the invoices, is actually a really decent payment. My issue is with the independent facilitators that are dumping everything into the parents. Like, oh yes, we do the PCP, but that's pretty much it. Like, if you get them services, if you get them names of people, as an independent facilitator, you have to make sure that when it's time to start, that they know the steps, they know their fingerprints, they know what email to contact, and you don't drop everything on the family, because then is the family who's hating everything in the process because they have to bridge the bridge. And honestly, the 2,500, it's enough for you to be paid to transition them fully into the first week. Then they're going to be doing payment, invoicing, making sure that the family understands. I'm sorry, but when independent facilitators start charging them from week 1 because they're showing them how to do the invoicing for the families that are not really computer savvy, I have a problem, because you do a transition when that person understands. I'm not saying 6 months into it, still solving their problems, but I'm saying if you got paid $2,500 for write one person center plan, it's your responsibility that you explain the process all the way into that family could spend the money. And that's where I stand. I think that is being dropped into the FMS's lap and is not the responsibility.
No, I 100% agree, Lourdes. It's the responsibility of the regional center to be helping you with this. And one of the big problems is that regional center service coordinators are completely untrained. Not all of them, but many of them, most of them, I would say, are untrained. And it is also the job of the independent facilitators, who also need more training. So go ahead, Fernando. Oh, you're still muted. Go ahead. Are you able to unmute? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. Now you can hear me. Yeah, in regards to the regional center, the inland regional center, you said that we needed to get people into the advisory committee. What happened was that the inland regional center, the last meeting they held was in October. They didn't hold one in November because of Thanksgiving. They didn't hold one in December because of Christmas. And it wasn't until January when they finally got around to doing that. Something else, they actually don't publicize when the meeting will take place. Okay, that actually happens. We actually were advised exactly when it was going to be done, almost at the last minute. And because we emailed the omnibus person, she actually showed up, and because of her, a lot more people showed up. So that's number one. Number two, in regards to the FMSs, yes, I know that there are problems with some of the FMS. Some are doing better than others. Some are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, in my opinion. There's really no accountability for some of the things that they do. And sorry, but I sent you an email in regards to that. And lastly, in regards to the FMSs, if they fail or whether or not the program will go away, that actually has to do with accountability. There should be some sort of oversight, some sort of audit. And for that reason, and for that same purpose, we should be somewhere along the way, maybe auditing the services that are provided by the individual regional centers, including, of course, the inland regional center, which is the one that gets the most amount of money and the one that, in my opinion, gives the least amount of services to people.
Yeah, so I did get your email, Fernando, and I do want to speak to you about it. But you know, I'm just going to repeat what I said before. You know, FMSs need our support right now. None of them are perfect. None of them, I mean, a lot of them are not returning phone calls in a timely way. I just saw somebody in the chat saying that they've been waiting and they can't get any FMS to sign on to them. That's about the worst case scenario, because you cannot go into the self-determination program without an FMS. I have been sharing this information with DDS for months and months, probably since last summer, probably since last May, that we have a problem with the way the rates that FMSs are paying. It's just not high enough for the amount of work that they're doing. So it's just not worth it to them to stay in. And if they leave, remember, self-determination goes away. We need them. Number two, they're all understaffed. And then two just left the state, and then basically everybody piled on to just a couple of FMSs. And so we need to, you know, I met with the FMS. You should know that a group of us at DBU met with all of the FMSs, and we asked them, what is it that you need to be successful? What changes can be made? And they gave us a list of very specific, excellent ideas. By the way, we also met with participants and family members and independent facilitators. And Molly is now working on a report that we are going to be sending with a list of recommendations to DDS and to the state legislature and to the state council, making recommendations about what really needs to be done hopefully we'll get this done in the next week or so. And maybe we'll do our next SDP Connect about these ideas. But we, you know, I am not going to at any time in these calls criticize the FMSs or the IFs. It's just not what I do. I am more than happy to meet with folks privately to try to guide and help and figure out where we can do things. But we need them to succeed, guys. There's some FMSs, by the way, who have been with us sitting at the table since 2013 trying to implement this law. And they have not been the barriers to implementation. Let me put it to you that way. There's been a lot of other barriers, but they have not been the barriers that it took us so many years to get to the point where we are now. And so, you know, that doesn't mean that they can't improve. Believe me, there's a lot of room for improvement in every part of the self-determination program, from participants not asking for things that they're not allowed to ask for, and from the families, you know, not doing true person-centered plans by being the independent facilitator of their kid and not actually having a person-centered planning meeting, to IFs who don't understand the process well enough to really advise, or don't ever, by the way, hire an IF who makes a promise that they're going to get you a certain amount of money in your budget, because they don't have that control. To regional centers who don't understand the program or who are discouraging people from going in the program, believe me, there's a lot of blame to go around for where we are today. But for me, ultimately, it all lies in the lap of DDS. And I have said this to them. I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said to DDS in meetings, is that DDS has to be very clear in their directions to regional centers and to the community, so that we know exactly what needs to happen, so that there aren't 21 regional centers and 21 different ways to do it. So yeah, go ahead, Fernando.
One last comment was that the audience of the hearing last week, the public hearing with the legislators, we were notified once again at the last minute, but most of us actually went ahead and did the public comment, and we supported both you and Elizabeth Gomez, and in the hopeful implementation or the speediness of that study that you guys are so much asking for, to make sure that we get true numbers and such. And so just wanted to let you know that we're all plugging in. We're trying to get there. We're trying to make sure that we get connected. And again, in regards to that regional center, what is it, advisory committee, we get very last minute notice. But the one thing that actually upsets me in regards to that is we're giving a 3-minute time to talk. And it's like, we go ahead and present our concerns, and they just go on to do whatever the hell they want without giving us any type of input, or sometimes not even a reaction. So, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. It's actually really quite problematic. And we believe that these local committees need to be a dialogue with the community more than it is just committees talking to each other. But I just want to say really quickly about that hearing that Fernando talked about last week. First of all, thank you, Fernando, for staying with it, and for your wife also speaking. I stayed on it till after 8 p.m. So I was there hearing every single thing that people said. And it was an incredible hearing, and it is archived, and you can get it on the California State Assembly Budget Committee website. But it was an incredible hearing about the funding for the DD system, and there was probably 100 community members, a lot of Spanish-speaking community members who really spoke eloquently about their not being able to get services. So thank you so much for doing that, Fernando. Really appreciate it. All right, we haven't even gone to our main presentation. I went off on the deep end. Okay, Kidada Medina, go ahead.
Hi, Judy. Thank you for allowing me to talk. I usually type, but I'm not able to today. I just wanted to touch on what you said about the FMSs, and I totally agree with you. I personally haven't had any issues with my FMS, but I do know that one of the biggest complaints is that they're inundated with a lot of questions from consumers, and it's not time for the FMS to step in yet. So a consumer can call their service coordinator and say, hey, I'm interested in self-determination. And they're like, oh, well, do you have an FMS? Did you do your spending plan? And then, they don't know any better. So now they're calling up FMSs, and that's just taking away valuable time from the FMSs because they're not ready yet for an FMS. Right. So it's that lack of knowledge, and it just kind of frustrates a lot of the FMSs, and then they're answering those calls and explaining the process to them when the service coordinator should have done that. So I totally agree with you. We need the FMSs and the IFs to, we need everyone for this to work, and it's amazing. And one good argument that I want to say is that you don't hear anyone who has transitioned saying, oh no, I want to go back to traditional. No one's saying that. So with all of the issues that they want to bring up, no one wants to go back to traditional services because it just doesn't work for a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great statement. Yeah, I think there was one person in the whole state who's gone back. Okay, Elizabeth Cuevas, go ahead. Can you unmute, Elizabeth?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Sorry about that. Oh, my comment is that I definitely want to support the FMSs, but I am having trouble in that I'm helping as an IF the parents all the way through, and then when the handoff is made to the FMS, I am there to still support the parents, but I don't know exactly what my role is because the parents are saying, okay, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do, but they gave me this packet. And so then I'm like, they were supposed to tell you what to do. So how much is it? I guess the solution would be if each FMS had a training program for the IF so that we know exactly what each FMS needs from us and what we should be doing, because I don't know, like, I don't know how each FMS works. So I'm like, okay, well, did they give you a packet? Well, no, they said they were going to send it. So then I'm emailing them like, do you want me to send the packets to each of the people on the spending plan, or exactly what do you need? And then I'm sure I'm irritating them, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what they're supposed to exactly be in charge of. So I don't really, so then I'm getting frustrated because I'm thinking maybe I'm doing their work and they're probably getting frustrated thinking they're doing my work. So it's not 100% clear, but I think, and I don't know how each of them works. So, so I can only tell you what I do for my own child with my own child's FMS, but even that, I don't really know 100%. So I think training for all of us, and also for the parents don't know what to ask. So we tell them, okay, go run and get on everybody's waiting list. And then the FMS is called, but they might not have their spending plan yet, but we told them to go get on a waiting list, right? And they don't really know what to ask. I think that even though we give them a script, they don't really understand what to ask until they go through it that first year. Once they go through it that first year, then they're gonna know. But it's very confusing, and so I just think that a training for all families, because generally the trainings for FMSs is very general, like, oh yes, we all provide this and we all do that, but how are parents supposed to choose which one is the best for them? So if each one did a training about how they work specifically, then they can choose, then they see the difference. Otherwise, it's just very general information that I could give my clients. They don't need to attend a workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I don't know if it's a phenomenal idea. I don't know if all of the FMSs have trainings. However, I can tell you GT Independence does. I actually had a meeting with them recently, and they have a video kind of training program for people. Like, this is how you do timesheets. This is how you do receipts. And so I've got to believe that a lot of the FMSs have some sort of guide for you, but I don't know that, but that's a great idea. And I'm going to bring it up. I want Tim Amparo and S. Cox to be very quick because we actually have to get to what we're doing today. So go ahead, Tim.
I always recommend to my FMS on the technical and logistics on how to do better. Over the past 3 months, we have learned a lot from each other and some of the implementation that they provided for me. They plan to offer it to all of their clients. All FMS want self-determination to succeed. No FMS are going to be perfect, but they truly want self-determination to succeed.
Thank you, Tim. That was perfectly said. I see that somebody's asking in the chat that they're with GT and they never saw a training. Maybe I'm like imagining that they said that to me and I could be wrong. I saw Teracel join. Teracel, are you able to, if you raise your hand, I'll let you respond, and maybe I completely misremember our conversation. Are you there, Teracel?
I cannot.
She's gone.
Yeah, I can't find Teracel in the list.
Yeah, I saw her come in, and then I guess she had to leave. I don't know if anybody else is from an FMS. Go ahead, Amparo.
Thank you. I'm trying to unmute. Okay, thank you. I agree with what you're saying. Everybody's got to get trained we're getting into a new program. We got to get people to understand it, but also regional has to understand it. You know, they're supposed to be having fairs to introduce it to our population, you know, and they haven't. I'm throwing a fair. They refuse to send me somebody, or they are unavailable to send me somebody for the self-determination program. And I reached out to you, and I reached out to the other young lady to get me somebody that knows more about the self-determination for the Antelope Valley for March 5th, so they can tell them more, because we're bringing out a large crowd. We're advertising in the radio, on 7 radio stations. Que Buena's coming out. I mean, we got a huge event that I'm throwing, but I have nobody that can tell our Latin community, our people of color, our whole community, what the self-determination program is about, because my regional center, North LA, has nobody available for that date. Regional center will be there, but I don't have anybody. So I'm hoping that you can help me out. Send me somebody March 5th, email me directly.
Absolutely, Amparo. And this is an in-person event, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I did forward your request to the Integrated Community Collaborative, who the ICC actually does self-determination trainings in Spanish. So I'm hoping that will work for you, but please get back in touch with me if they haven't responded to you yet, okay?
Yeah, because this is, I mean, I don't mind spending, you know, my personal money. Our community's in peril like everybody's, right? So I would love to get our Latin community that could benefit so much, especially the ones that are already in, you know, parent conversion programs. They would benefit 100%. So my regional center's unable to reach them. I could reach them. So
Yeah.
send me somebody. I'm here for you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to point out in the chat that Tanya Hernandez from GT Independence said that they do have videos and training, and they let folks know. So maybe Tanya and Teracel would be a great idea for you all, is to send an email to all of your clients around the state with the links. Oh, she's putting in the link, the YouTube channel. But it would be great to email it, because we only have 148 people on here, and you probably have many more people who are your clients who haven't, who don't know about it. But thank you, Tanya. Okay, last comment before we change the subject a bit. S. Cox, go ahead. Are you there? S. Cox, you want to unmute yourself? There you go.
This is Shelly. I think I accidentally raised my hand. I'm sorry.
No worries. Hey, Shelly.
All right.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so all right, so we're going to move on to our presentation now. Let me get it up on the screen to share with all of you. Let's see. Let me get the PowerPoint started. Okay, so today we're talking about, hold on, there it is. Molly, can you see just the slide? No, you're still, I bet you're still on. No, are you seeing all of the,
It's not full screen.
it's not full screen?
No.
Okay, hold on, people. Hold on, people. Stop share. Let me do this in the right, you have to do this in the right order to actually get it. There you go, play from start, and you go like that, then you go share, then you go like that. All right, I think this time, I think I have it. Now what are you seeing, Molly?
Yes, we're there.
Okay, good. And all you're seeing is the slide. Okay. So there are participant choice specialists coming to your regional center. It was funding provided last year, and we're here to tell you about them so you know how they might be able to help you. So in last year's budget, which was authorized on July 1st. There was $7.2 million funded for 3 years for a participant choice specialist for each regional center. There's up to 3 participant, there are 3, not up to, but there are 3 per regional center. The positions are intended to be the experts on the self-determination program in each regional center. And they're not only work on the self-determination program, but they also work on something called participant directed services, which is the ability of people who stay in the traditional system to hire people that they choose to be respite and respite care workers and other personal care type folks for a very specific dollar amount. It is not self-determination. Let me be very clear about that. It is not self-determination. You do not get to choose the salary of that person. You do not get a budget. You do not get to purchase cool things and activities to do in the community. But what it does do is at least give you choice about the kind of person that you're hiring. And you can often hire a family or close friends for these kinds of things. They are not service coordinators, by the way. So it specifically says they shall not be case carrying. What that means is they cannot be case managers or service coordinators. They are just, they are kind of at a more senior level, and they help to guide and train the rest of the staff. Okay, so what is the roles? Why don't you take this one, Molly?
So the roles of the participant choice specialist. So they're there to support the regional center coordinators. So coordinators who have self-advocates that are transitioning or in the self-determination program, they're there to support them, to help resolve issues, to do training. They're also there to assist directly, I assume, families and self-advocates if they're having trouble or a barrier as they transition into the program. And hopefully these positions help to build a good system within the regional centers about policy, procedure, when new staff comes on, how they're trained in self-determination. So I feel like they're kind of maybe this isn't the right word, but they'll be the backbone of making sure the program is being implemented at regional centers.
Thank you. Let me let these people in from the waiting room. Okay, there we go. All right, so here we have several slides on what their role is. So their roles include making accurate information, okay, note the word accurate, making accurate information available to regional center staff, consumers, and families about all the options, including the self-determination program, and all of the regulations that determine allowable and non-allowable use of SDP funds. A few weeks ago, we talked about the new guidance about what you cannot use funds for on various things. I know I'm hearing that it's being completely taken out of context, and I'm hoping that there is more clarity that's going to come out soon. I've been begging for it's going to be a frequently asked question, or FAQ, on the DDS website, which will clarify some of this. Please, I hope it happens soon. However, because we do not want these participant choice specialists to actually have put up new barriers to participation. We want them to break down the barriers and have the rules correct. Hold on, did I just, I think I did. Hold on, let me see. Hold on, there we go. Okay, so this is the next one. Go ahead, Molly.
So they will be providing training to their their service coordinators in the regional center about the fair hearing process. I assume relate to the self-determination program. And what is really the principles of self-determination, and hopefully these specialists will have they won't be just hidden away behind the curtain. They'll be part of your local advisory committee. They'll come. I know we're looking at doing some forms of it, helped by me and Tim to talk to them about working with self-advocates. So we're hoping these people are visible in their region and really are not just sitting back working inside, but also with the community at large.
Thanks, Molly. So one of the things that they're also required to help with is to meet enrollment targets and benchmarks. So what does that mean? Each regional center, there's a process right now. In fact, I think there's a meeting tomorrow, right, Nina, about the regional center performance incentives. So each regional center is going to be required to meet a certain set of what's called a benchmark. A benchmark is like a goal. They'll have their own IPP goals, except it's their regional center goals that they really need to meet. And these targets will really focus a lot on equity issues. What we're seeing in enrollment is that whites are overrepresented and Latinos are underrepresented substantially. African Americans are also somewhat underrepresented as well. And so they need to have each regional center has to meet very specific targets and goals on the self-determination program. They're also supposed to be working on raising awareness of participant-directed services. So they have to have efforts to identify concerns and barriers. They have to reduce identified barriers, and by providing information and training to consumers, families, and providers about these options. And so, you know, it's funny because they constantly are calling it participant-directed service options, and we remain concerned that they will use the participant-directed services, which the one I told you that was very different than the self-determination program. They'll say, you don't need to be in self-determination. That's a hassle. Just choose participant-directed services where you still have very, very limited control over your lives. So we're hoping that that will not happen. Go ahead on this one, Molly.
They also kind of what I was talking about, do outreach and training for diverse communities of creating input from stakeholders like their local advisory committee, self-advocates, family members, about the training and other strategies being effective. Are they trainings helping people understand what the program is, how to enroll, what you do when you enroll? So again, these are not paper pushers. These are here to work and educate the community. So again, it's just hopefully if they work connectly with the local advisory committee, you can really have a robust training for your area.
Oops. One of the other features is that they can complete additional reviews of participants' budgets, which exceed a specified threshold. So we don't know what that threshold is. It's an amount of money that DDS has been very mysterious about. And using that information in aggregate, this is not in plain language at all. In aggregate means in average, right? So it's not that you're focusing on one person with one large budget. You're looking at it overall within your regional center to identify additional training, program guidance, and verification of compliance with state and federal requirements. So what does that mean? That's hard to explain. So at some point, DDS is going to come out with an amount of money that any budget over that amount of money is going to have an additional review. It's going to have an additional review, not just by the participant choice specialist, but also a review by DDS. We don't know what that amount is, whether it's $100,000, $200,000, but what they're looking for is to be able to justify why it's so high. A lot of these folks had very large budgets in the traditional system. So that's kind of an easy thing to justify, right? You had a large budget because you had a great deal of need. You had a lot of services. In the traditional system, you don't have a budget, you have services. So you had a lot of services in the traditional system because your needs were very high. And then you move that budget into the self-determination program. They're going to be looking at, are those needs being met by this budget? If you had a large budget in the traditional system, and then you get an even larger budget in the self-determination program, my prediction is that is where the focus is going to be. Not when somebody maybe has a $200,000 budget that they got from traditional services and they've kept within that $200,000 budget. I don't think that's going to have a lot of scrutiny. It's when you have a large budget going in and then it grows maybe from 200,000 to 300,000. They're going to be looking at that. So people need to be prepared to be able to justify, not people, regional centers. Remember, we do not certify budgets. Regional centers certify budgets. So regional centers need to be prepared to justify how large budgets have actually increased to be larger. I think many of it is very justifiable, right? It's maybe their needs have changed, maybe they had unmet needs in the traditional system, but that is, I think, where this is going. And then finally, they're supposed to work with eligible consumers and their families to apply for Medi-Cal if they're not already on Medi-Cal. In many regional centers, there is already a staff member whose entire job it is to do that. So these are things that they don't have to do. These are among the things that they'll be doing. Okay, there's one more thing that I want to, that Molly could not put in here because the guidance has not come out yet. But I know that in this guidance, it's going to say to you that each regional center will get 3 participant choice specialists. One of the 3 does not have to do all these things that Molly put in this PowerPoint. One of the 3 can be part of the accounting department or the billing department at the regional center, and they can be the point person on the self-determination program for ensuring that FMSs are getting paid and that the budgets are moving forward. But they're more administrative and technical. They're not decision makers. Regional centers have complained that the self-determination program is overwhelming them. I really don't understand how it's become so complicated in the process of the accounting department, because it shouldn't be this hard, but apparently it is this hard. So regional centers are now getting this extra help where they're able to hire a person just to work on self-determination. which is interesting because in some regional centers, they have so few people in the self-determination program. I'm not really sure what this person's going to do all the time, but hopefully it will break down some of the barriers that we've been hearing about. All right, so we go to questions, and I'm going to stop. Did I stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what questions might people have? Oh, I see Connie and Harvey. Go ahead. Oh, what happened to you? There
I
you go.
did. I couldn't unmute.
Okay.
I would like to know how they're being trained. I mean, what surprises me is how many people are entering into our world and I don't know where they came from. I don't know if they understand the paradigm shift. That's the big thing. And I do want to say something that is so profound. For those that don't know me, my son's 53. I've been around a long time.
54.
And yeah, next month. I always say older than me, but anyway, we always heard there wasn't enough money to do things. The money is just rolling out. I mean, Judy, you did an amazing job of presenting how much money is possible to make change. So I would like us all to be able to give DVU input on what they're seeing and if these participant-directed people are, in essence, barriers.
You know, Judy, you know my mantra now about separating it out at the regional centers. This is a paradigm change. Everybody knows it. This is not new stuff. We all know that. Take it out. Be at the regional center, but take it out that people, it's separate. It's conflicted. It's conflicted. The successful places in the country, it really is a separate entity. Okay, but it can be under the present system. We're not taking people out of jobs or anything else. This is freedom for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Harv. Thanks, Connie. Other questions, you can use the raise hand feature, or you probably have been collecting a lot of questions in the chat, Ed.
I sure have. One is from Carla. Question: what can we do to help make changes on how the FMS has to work now? For example, having to send POS, I believe that's purchase of services, for each individual service code. That makes it so complicated if you want to make changes in the spending plan, because the regional center now has to send a new POS for the changes in the codes. It is very complicated now. Can they send just one POS? Also, can we do our own purchases and send them the invoices, kind of like the FSA work? The process is too time consuming for everyone right now. We need to simplify the process.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Carla. Yeah, when we met with the FMSs last couple weeks ago, that was a big concern of theirs. It's obviously a concern of all of us. If you want to make a small change to your spending plan and it requires 6 different people at a regional center to look at it, that makes no sense at all. So that is one of the biggest recommendations that we are making to DDS, which is to eliminate most of the service codes and to only have 3. 1 for living arrangements, 1 for community integration and employment, and 1 for health. And that's it. And so therefore, if you are, most people spend most of their money in community integration activities, although adults who live on their own probably spend the majority of their money on living arrangements. But it just means that if you have in your spending plan that you're taking a swim class for exercise, decide you don't like swimming and decide instead to take a karate class, that does not require a massive amount of work on the part of a regional center. It is literally just a little box check, and the FMS can just move along and make those purchases for you. One of the problems that we're seeing is that FMSs are not getting paid for things that are actually in the spending plan that the regional center send to them. Remember, spending plans are not approved by regional centers. They are allowed to ask questions based on a few things, please go back into our library and see how we have talked about that many, many times. But regional centers, if they have sent a spending plan onto the FMS, there should be an assumption by the FMS that they will get paid. You should know that FMSs get paid in what's called arrears. It means that they get paid after they've put out the money. So one of the things that has been going on is that FMSs put out money for clients and the regional center never pays them, even though it's in the spending plan. So a lot of them are out of money. Some of them are out tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is one of the reasons some of them are leaving the state. And so, we need to simplify the process for sure. But that is up to DDS. That is not up to the regional centers. That is really up to DDS to make happen. Go ahead, Ed.
Our next question is from Susan Halden. Can we find out how our regional center is spending funds for these new specialists?
Yeah, that is something that the local advisory committee should be asking that exact question. Who are going to be the 3 specialists? They should be going to the meeting, every single meeting of the local advisory committees. I know at my regional center, they've only hired 1 person so far who comes to all the meetings, makes presentations and listens to concerns and helps to address those concerns, although he's very new and I understand very overwhelmed. But we have to give a little patience to these participant choice specialists. Some of them are coming into this knowing very little about the self-determination program, which is of course a problem in itself because they're the ones who are supposed to be training the service coordinators about them. So, but what you can do is ask regional centers to hurry up the process and get these people on board. I know that some of the participant choice specialists, I think that they will probably start to network with each other, which by the way has its good sides and its downsides. When they network with each other, hopefully they're sharing accurate information so they learn from each other. On the other hand, sometimes the regional centers with the most restrictive way of thinking about the program tell everybody else this is what we're doing. They all get the idea of how to make it most restrictive or put up more barriers, and they share that information with each other. We hope that's not what's going to happen, but we've seen that happen in other things in the past having nothing to do with self-determination. So Carla, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to go back to the FMS and I really wanted to work, and there is a few things that I was thinking, just because, for example, like in the FSA, if I need new glasses, I pay for my glasses and then I submit the invoice and then they reimburse me, for example. And if I buy something that is not reimbursable, they just don't give me the money back, or those type of things. It makes it so much easier for someone to just go purchase something instead of asking and sending emails. It's like an extra level, because I send it to someone at the FMS sends it to someone else and makes a purchase. And then is when the mistakes starts to happen, because there are many people in there, So if we can I know that right now there is not approved to do reimbursement, but I feel that could be something that it would make things so much easier, and for us to have that control and freedom as well. So would that something, and what can we do? I don't know what it needs to be done to make all those changes for the FMS to make it simpler for everybody.
Nina, were you going to respond to this, or did you have a different question?
No, I had a different question.
Oh, okay. So let me respond to that, Carla. So in this case, we need to blame the federal government. The federal government is the one who says you cannot be reimbursing people. Which I don't understand, honestly, because they reimburse parents in the traditional system. So why don't they allow reimbursement in the self-determination program? But that is something we can definitely see if maybe the application, the waiver, the contract we have with the federal government can be changed to allow reimbursements. Because I can tell you that a lot of FMSs are very open to providing reimbursements, but they're prohibited from doing so.
Yes, and also right now it's also the same issue with gift cards. They say you cannot get gift cards, but that's needed many times because you have to purchase something like right away. It has to be Sunday morning or you lose your spot, you know, those type of things. So there is no, you know, those type of solutions, and it feels like they don't trust us. It's like, what are we gonna do, like shopping with, you know, instead of doing what we're supposed to do. And if we send an invoice after, then we have that proof, right? That we did what we had to do.
Yeah, I would say this, that they can't give you a credit card for sure. That they're not going to do is give you a credit card number, because they can't track that. I feel like the gift card is not something that's prohibited at all by the federal government. The federal government definitely allows it. I think it is a matter of FMSs, and any of them can raise their hand to explain why. But I think it's just a matter of they're worried about getting audited, and they need to have total control over how funds are being spent. That's what I would have to guess.
Because my regional center said yesterday, no, like gift cards are not approved. Even if you buy a gift card only for that particular, let's say like the swim academy, and you purchase that to use it, they don't allow it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, okay. Go ahead, Nina.
This is a little bit related to, you know, the waiver and waiver requirements. I know I'm always a broken record on this, but on the participant choice specialist, where they're the ones are chosen to work on the back of the house accounting type issues, I really think there has to be some, I don't know, effort by DDS to have one of the job one is, what are the absolute minimum federal waiver requirements in the back of the house? Because I have heard directly from my regional center that complying with the federal waiver requirements is what is tangling them up in the back of the house, whether it's for changes or initially. I've heard it, and I bet you they're not alone. I don't know if it's unique to them. I don't know if it's because they got burned in an audit, but it is, I have a feeling there's just this disconnect. And I just feel like I don't want to waste these. I think it's important to have that ability to untangle this. But if there's something that's a basic understanding of the minimum requirements, and it may get to some of this like issues about reimbursement too. I think that project that DDS has to have, I think it has to go hand in hand with you know, having these positions, you know, do a good job. And I think we should make that request to them.
Great idea. I love it. I love it. Rick, go ahead. Rick was our featured speaker yesterday at our Communication Access Connect. We're so happy to have you. Oop. Can you unmute? Go ahead. Try it again, Rick. You're still muted, Rick. Not sure if you're able to unmute. There you go. You're unmuted now. Go ahead.
I need to change my FMS and it is so confusing.
It's a confusing process to change your FMS.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that some people say it's easier to do it at the beginning of your next year in the program. Certainly you don't want to do it until the end of the month. You don't want to change your FMS in the middle of the month. That can really be a problem. The FMS that you're choosing, the new one, should be able to help you transition to them and figure out what the steps are. Rick, have you found your new FMS yet?
No.
No, okay. I would spend time figuring out which one you want to choose, and then they'll help you transfer things over.
Yes.
Oh, you have found it. So the new FMS should absolutely be helping you. And you know who else should be helping you is your regional center service coordinator. They should be helping you because these FMSs are the only the only vendored agency that they'll be working with. So definitely contact your regional center service coordinator. Keep us posted, okay, Rick?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Carla.
I just wanted to say about the change in FMS. So it has to be very good coordinated because of, if you have like purchases that are still pending or services that still have to be invoiced. So you need, because the regional center has to send like now new POS to the new FMS, and you have to have everything very, very well calculated, how much you spend it and how much you're gonna spend now. So if you have that, if you manage everything with the previous FMS and with the new one in the regional center, then it should be okay. But yes,
Okay.
it's very complicated.
Very good advice. It probably is complicated. Go ahead, Ed, with more questions.
Sure, just 1 second. I want to make sure I remove that spotlight on Carla. There we go. Okay, so a question from that I'm actually going to have Lorna translate. I'm going to put it in the chat. Folks, please, until Lorna has finished translating this question, please do not use the chat. It helps to make sure that she's able to translate it correctly. And just a reminder, Judy, that you'll need to summarize it for our Korean interpreter, Helen.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. The question was, if the FMS is having problems because they're not getting enough information from the regional centers, what is your suggestion for us who are trying to transition into the program? Well, these participant choice specialists are supposed to be making these things easier for you. Everybody should find out who the participant choice specialist is at your regional center and be in touch with them. You should know that some regional centers have already had self-determination coordinators all along. I know that I saw Susie Requar from San Diego Regional Center come on at a certain point. She is their self-determination coordinator at that regional center. And I'm not sure if she's now going to be called participant choice specialist or something different, but there's somebody at every regional center, and you should be in touch with them if you have any concerns about transitioning in. The other thing is you should be working with a person-centered planner or an independent facilitator to help move you, who can handle some of this. There are people out there who can be your advocate, and it doesn't always have to be on you. So definitely use the resources. You may also want to use one of the coaches. These coaches also have that opportunity that if the regional center is putting up barriers, they can help try to break down those barriers for you. That is supposed to be their job. And also use your local advisory committee, because they're supposed to be listening to the community at all of their meetings. So that would be my suggestion.
Next up, we have a question from, let me navigate back here, Melissa. Can an FMS wait until they get reimbursed from the regional center before they pay staff and or pay invoices?
That is not the way it's supposed to work. As I said earlier, FMSs are getting paid in arrears. Think of the word rear, like behind you. So it means that they're supposed to put out the money, and then they'll get paid back for each dollar that they have spent. So it's actually supposed to be the opposite. Regional centers are actually at this point prohibited from paying for anything to the FMS until that money's already been spent. So I'm not really sure if you want to raise your hand and explain what happened, but that is not supposed to be. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Go ahead, Ed.
I actually don't have, well, I have a comment from Lorna that Lorna has translated from Juana. Regional centers always put barriers to all families.
I wish that weren't true. I wish that weren't true.
And then we have a hand raised from Melissa.
I see Linda Chen Rapp was asking if reimbursements are allowed in the self-determination programs in other states. That's an excellent question. And I don't know if anybody know, any of the FMSs who are on today would know the answer to that. I could certainly do some research on that. But that's a really good question. Not sure. Carla asked, could you explain again if parents of adults can get paid in the self-determination program? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Regional centers are going around causing major crises in adults' lives because they're saying that the parents or the family members of adults cannot get paid. That is not true. You will be seeing at some point, I was hoping it would be in the last 2 weeks, new FAQs or frequently asked questions, frequently asked questions. There is going to be a new one coming out specifically on this issue, and they will clarify that parents or siblings who are conservators are allowed to get paid. Now, immediate family of children are not allowed to get paid. So don't even try that one, okay? But we're not sure if that also includes grandparents or aunts or cousins, because we know certainly in the traditional system, grandparents and aunts and cousins can get paid through the respite program or personal assistance of minors. So we know that that exists. You know, I think that you will be hopefully getting clarification. So my suggestion, if any of you have been told by your regional center that that conservators of adults cannot get paid, I urge you to call the ombudsperson and have them get involved because they know that that's the answer. I also urge you to ask your regional center to call DDS for advice because they also know that that's the correct answer, okay? Okay, we only have 1 more minute and 2 people just raised their hands really quickly. So Melissa, be real fast because we lose our interpreters in 1 minute.
Yeah, I was just clarifying my statement. So I was told by somebody that their FMS has not paid their staff in a couple months because they haven't gotten the money from regional center yet. So that's a problem if they're waiting to get the money from regional center before they pay the staff.
Oh my God, that's horrifically bad. Okay, that one, I hope you've contacted the ombudsperson because that's a crisis because people can't not get paid for 2 months. They will quit their job.
Yeah, I just heard it the other day. So
yikes, that's actually a lawsuit right there. You can't work. Yeah. You cannot work and then not get paid. I mean, somebody's going to get sued.
Exactly. Okay, that's just to clarify my statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not good, not good. I apologize, Yuki, and I apologize to others who've been putting questions in the chat. No, there is not an ombudsman for each regional center. There's one for the state, for the whole self-determination program. And currently it's Katie Hornberger. And I think if you probably go towards the beginning of the chat, you'll see that Ed put that in the beginning of the chat, a way to reach her. But you can also go on the DDS website at dds.ca.gov, and you can find all the information about the ombudsperson, and hopefully you'll get a call back. So thank you, everybody. We will see you in a couple of weeks. I'm heading to Disney World next week. We did not win the Super Bowl. No, we did win the Super Bowl here in Los Angeles. But we are going, but that is not, we were planning to go to Disney World even before the Rams won the Super Bowl. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone. Bye.